Everything you thought you knew about Mexico's economy? Yeah, it's probably wrong. Today, we're tearing apart an explosive new report that completely flips the script on why Mexico is struggling. We are tossing out the usual excuses, and we are diving straight into the hard, undeniable data.
So, what's the big villain here? Did the rise of China and cheap overseas labor destroy Mexican growth? It's a really comfortable excuse, isn't it? Just point fingers right across the ocean. But the data? The data tells a completely different, frankly shocking story. Here is the brutal reality check. Mexico's worst economic enemy is not foreign competition. It's an inside job. The research points the finger directly at a suffocating, rigid domestic system that is literally choking the life out of its own growth.
Just think about how this played out historically. Back in the 1950s, Mexico was sprinting right alongside rising powerhouses like Korea and Chile. They were completely neck and neck. But then, the divergence is just wild. Korea skyrockets, Chile pulls way ahead, and Mexico, total flatline. The researchers set out to figure out exactly why this massive gap happened.
That brings us to Section 1, Worker Protection, a Harmful Paradox.
And this is where things get really counterintuitive. Check out the labor market rigidity. The gap here is absolutely staggering. You've got English-speaking developed nations sitting way down at a tiny 0.15 on the index, but Mexico, they're topping the charts at over 0.7. It is basically the most paralyzed labor system on Earth.
It all stems from a 1917 labor law stating labor is not an item subject to trade. Now sure, that sounds incredibly noble on paper, but the report argues it is actually economic poison. By making hiring and firing astronomically expensive, the math completely breaks down. Businesses just freeze up.
The original goal was to build an iron shield around every single worker, but the brutal reality? Companies are absolutely terrified to hire anyone. The researchers found that forcing this rigid, one-size-fits-all protection actually destroys the incentive to create new jobs. It is completely backfiring.
Section 2. Losing the race at age 3.
Okay, society constantly throws massive amounts of money at high schools and universities, right? But this study highlights an unforgiving biological fact. Human brain development peaks before age 3. If you miss that tiny window, spending money later on gives you massively diminishing returns.
And the data exposes a really harsh cycle here. When families are trapped in extreme poverty, they just don't have the resources to invest in those critical first 36 months. So a child's lifelong learning capacity is permanently stunted. The class divide is completely locked in before preschool even begins.
And to make matters worse, when these kids finally do get to school, they hit a massive institutional wall. The report shows that monopolistic teacher unions completely control hiring. They actively block performance-based evaluations. The authors argue this system effectively kills teaching excellence dead in its tracks.
Which leads into Section 3, the truth about the underground economy.
Prepare to have another major myth busted. Forget the idea that people work off the books just to steal welfare benefits or scam the system. The study proves they are literally forced underground. Trying to run a fully legal business under the system, it is financial suicide.
Let's walk through a small business owner's daily death spiral. Step 1, you try to open legally. Step 2, you instantly hit a brick wall of massive taxes and insanely rigid labor rules. Step 3, it takes well over a year just to enforce a basic contract. So, Step 4, you retreat into the unregulated shadows just to feed your family.
The researchers call this phenomenon self-selection. We've had the logic completely backwards. The informal economy isn't the thing destroying the nation's productivity. It's the nation's own crushing regulations that are artificially creating the informal economy.
Section 4, the only way out.
So how do they fix it? Well, the report's solutions definitely don't involve more government welfare. The prescription is pretty radical. Stop blaming foreign competition. Tear down those outdated 1917 labor monopolies. Slash taxes on small businesses. And aggressively funnel investment into early childhood brain development.
I mean, just think about this number, 421. That is the absurd number of days it takes just to enforce a basic business contract in court. Oh, and it'll cost you 20% of the contract's total value too. Under those conditions, the authors argue economic growth isn't just difficult, it is mathematically impossible.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question. Will policymakers finally face the music and strip away all this suffocating red tape? Or will they just keep regulating their own people into poverty? The data is crystal clear. Now the choice is entirely theirs.